Scientists just found life here, and they don't want you to know a single rock on Mars may have already answered the biggest question in human history, and the people who found it seem afraid to say it out loud. For months, something has been happening behind the scenes at NASA, something their own scientists are struggling to contain. Behind carefully chosen words, cautious statements, and endless "more research is needed," there is a discovery sitting on the surface of Mars that points to only one conclusion. Life existed there, and maybe still does. This story begins with Perseverance, the rover tasked with exploring the ancient lakebed inside Mars's Jezero crater. Officially, it has been drilling, photographing, and collecting geological samples to determine whether the red planet might have supported life long ago. But deep inside the raw data, something appeared that risked collapsing the cautious narrative NASA has tried to protect for decades. It wasn't an image of a creature or a skeleton or a fossil. It was something far more subtle and far harder to deny. A slab of hardened lakebed, covered in dark circular stains and tiny spots. To the untrained eye, nothing remarkable. But to geologists, a flashing siren. Patterns like these on Earth almost always come from one thing: the activity of living microbes. And this time, the rock wasn't from Earth. Immediately, the Perseverance team paused their planned route and redirected every instrument toward the discovery. They drilled, they cored, they sealed the sample in a titanium tube, nicknaming it Sapphire Canyon. Later, they took a rover selfie beside the freshly bored hole, a photo that would someday become iconic if the truth ever fully reaches the public. Inside those little dots, the leopard spots and poppy seeds were organic molecules, carbon compounds that form the basis of life. Alongside them were sulfur, iron, and two extremely rare minerals, vivianite and greigite. On Earth, these minerals are directly linked to decaying organisms. They show up where microbes use sulfur and iron to produce energy, a biological process. Something on Mars had done the same thing. Against every instinct of caution, the researchers reviewed the data again and again. They ran alternative scenarios. They involved other teams around the world under strict confidentiality agreements, asking them to tear the hypothesis apart. For almost a year, scientists quietly tried to prove themselves wrong. Every other explanation collapsed. Normal geology? No. The sample showed no evidence of the extreme heat required. Highly acidic water? Impossible. A mineral inside the rock would have dissolved instantly. Chemical reactions without biology? The conditions simply didn't exist. One by one, the non-biological explanations evaporated. The quiet internal verdict became unavoidable. If this rock were found on Earth, every geologist would classify it as biological in origin. That should have been the moment the world changed forever. The moment NASA declared that humanity is not alone. But instead, the announcement was filtered, softened, sanded down. At the press briefing, rather than stating the truth outright, they called it the strongest potential biosignature ever found on Mars. A phrase carefully engineered to excite hope while protecting careers. And the public accepted it because most people don't know what a biosignature really means. To the people who gathered this sample and studied it for months, the meaning was already clear. Mars was alive. The caution comes from history. In 1967, the Viking missions performed experiments that initially hinted at metabolism in Martian soil, only for the results to be later attributed to reactive salts. In science, the shame of being wrong echoes louder than the joy of being right. And the scientists who work on Mars have learned to speak as if the truth itself might explode if handled too quickly. But off camera, away from the microphones, there is a deeper fear. One rarely spoken aloud. If life arose on Mars independently, life may be everywhere. And that reshapes everything. It changes religion, science, politics, and philosophy. It rewrites the idea of what a planet is and what we are. It suggests that humanity is not rare or unique, but ordinary. One of many. A small part of a living cosmos. It also introduces uncomfortable questions. If microbes formed on Mars long before Earth developed complex organisms, where are they now? Did something wipe them out? Or could something still be there, evolving beneath the surface? Now, the biggest problem isn't proving life once existed on Mars. It's putting that proof into human hands, literally. The sample containing the suspected biosignatures is sealed on the Martian surface. To examine it conclusively, NASA must bring it home. That means a new mission, one rocket to land on Mars, another to return the canisters to orbit, and a third to catch them and fly them back to Earth. It will be the most complex retrieval mission in human history, and until it succeeds, the truth will remain technically unconfirmed worldwide. Convenient, some might say, especially as NASA struggles for funding. Every delay, every budget cut, every congressional hearing pushes the final answer a little farther away. And while the debate drags on, the most important sample ever collected sits untouched in the Martian dust, waiting for a civilization on Earth to decide whether it truly wants the answer. But here's the part nobody can avoid forever. Once the sample arrives on Earth, and once more advanced machines scan it in ways no rover ever could, there will be nowhere left to hide. Either the strange circular patterns and organic compounds came from ancient Martian microbes, or they didn't. And if they did, humanity will face an entirely new reality. Because confirming life on Mars forces a second question, one far heavier. If life formed on another world once, how many worlds has it formed on? Planets with oceans, moons with liquid subsurface water, exoplanets with breathable atmospheres. Suddenly, every one of them becomes a potential cradle of biology. Life stops being a miracle and becomes a pattern, a predictable consequence of chemistry.